Connecting. Sending data. Okay. Okay. I think I'm back. I think I'm back. So, part three, I guess. So yeah, I'm gonna at the end of this, I'm gonna make one concise video with tidbits from each of these things, and I will put it all together for you guys because this is such a I know it's annoying for everybody. So sorry about that. But yeah, we're gonna get this thing popping again. All right, so again, this is Billy. I'm talking about how to build or be a part of an inclusive community. Basically, an inclusive community is a community, in our opinion or in our definition, a community free of toxicity. Toxic people are people who harm others, liars, disrespectful people, predators, people who take advantage of other people, disreputable, dishonest people who are shady and do stuff like that. Free of those kind of people, but whatever your race, body type, sexual orientation, gender, religious beliefs, political affiliation, everybody feels welcome and everybody can get dances. That's what we mean, okay? And I said the first thing you can do is ask yourself if that's what you really want. Do you really want to be a part of an inclusive community? If you want to, if you're truly willing to do what it takes, cool. If not, then it's whatever you do is going to be inauthentic and it's not going to work. It's just not going to work, yeah? Let's see. I'm trying to share this thing to my page. No, that's not it. Share on copy link. Okay, I'll just share it to my personal wall. Yeah, again, at the end of this, I'm going to cut a video, make it kind of concise, about 30 minutes or so. And that's what I'm going to do. So here we go. So the first thing I talked about was you have to ask yourself if it's really what you want. If you're not authentically an inclusive person, as far as your own personality, it's not going to work. If you're a cliquish person or you feel more comfortable where you're kind of in the in crowd and everybody else is, if you're the nucleus, you're not going to be able to build an inclusive community because the vibe of an event is a direct reflection on the vibe of the organizer. Okay, so it ain't gonna work. If you are not an organizer or you're a social dancer and you wanna be a part of the solution, there's a lot that you can do on your own right, even if you don't have a title, just by taking a stand, setting an example, and then you become a leader. Okay, so I talked about the first thing you do is set the example in who you choose to dance with. Dance with people who aren't getting dances. If you do that, it's very easy to then inspire other people to do the same. And next thing you know, that's what happens. For us, when we first started talking about this particular issue of dancing with everybody, like, I don't know, 8 years ago, not everybody was happy because there's some people who they feel like they're grown-ups, they pay their money, and they should be able to dance with whoever they want. And that is true. But that is not being inclusive. So if you're trying to build an inclusive community full of people like that, it doesn't work. Okay? And then I was about to start talking about taxi dancers, okay? The reason that taxi dancers became a thing in Europe is because they did not have an inclusive culture. So, and let's be honest what it really is, because women tend to spend more money on dance than men. Women tend to buy more passes, pay for more classes. They wanted to make sure that those ladies are taken care of because otherwise they'll stop spending their money, right? Let's not kid ourselves. For most people currently in positions of influence in dance, what they really are concerned with are money and influence. Now there are exceptions. We're exceptions. There are other exceptions too. But understand this, right? They don't want to lose that money. And they don't want to be canceled. And right now, cancel culture is something that's really going strong on racism right now. And there's a lot of other people who are about to be canceled now. Because why should you spend your money to go to spend time in a space that doesn't serve your interests, right? And, you know, and that's something I'll talk about at the very end. But yeah, so be the example. Dance with people who aren't getting dances. Because it's the right thing to do if you want to be inclusive, but also because a lot of the best dancers are not necessarily going to be the ones who you think are going to be the best dancers based on your stereotypes and your sexual preferences. Some of the best dances I've ever had are with older, darker, bigger women. They're lovely to dance with and have really good energy. Tend to be very appreciative, because if you're at an event and they're not getting dances, they tend to be very appreciative that you actually see them and value them and ask them to dance. And so the energy of the dance becomes through the roof. And through my career as an instructor, as a social dancer, that's what I do. And I almost always end up having fun because I get to connect with people. I'm dancing with the ladies nobody else is dancing with, and they're awesome for the most part. And even if they're not that good dance-wise, their energy is so good that it makes the dance fun, right? So this is something you guys got to think about. Now, the third thing, first, make sure you really want to be a part of or build an inclusive community. Be honest with yourself. 2, set the example yourself, especially if you are an organizer, because again, if you're an organizer and your events don't have an inclusive vibe, it's your fault. I'll say this again. If you are an organizer and people don't feel included at your events, it's a reflection of you. Straight up. People ain't gonna like that. The reason people ain't gonna like that is because most spaces in dance right now are not inclusive. Ours is one of the few, because we built it from the ground up that way. Now, how do you do this? You gotta set the example. Set the example. Then people who like what you do are going to be drawn to you. People who don't are going to be pushed away. Because me and my partner, my wife, have been so outspoken about this kind of thing. I pissed off people who feel like I should just be able to dance with whoever I want and da-da-da-da-da. They don't come to our events, right? So all the stuff I speak out against, they don't support us, right? Many of them back in the day thought that they were going to hurt us, but they didn't. They helped us, because now the people who stick around and who support are people who vibe with our vision. So now I don't have to spend so much time walking around making sure that people at our events are dancing, because everybody does that. We have attracted good people to our sphere of influence. We have leads who are good guys and good girls and who dance with everybody, and I don't have to say anything, right? With teachers, this becomes something that you can do in your classes. When you create the culture in your classrooms that everybody dances with everybody, nobody feels left out, all right? So you don't have to be like, okay, I'm going to dance with the black women now, right? Because again, that's what's happening right now, is people are like, how do I take care of the black women? Which is a good thing, because black women are the least privileged demographic in social dance right now. But that's not going to fix things long term, because you take and you're like, okay, I'm going to just dance with black women right now. Okay, well, what about the other women? Now they're feeling left out and now they're upset. So, okay, now I'm like, okay, I got to take care of this other demographic now. Now these other demographics are upset, right? The only way to really fix it is to look at who's not getting danced with, who's not getting attention, who's not feeling involved, and get them involved, right? Look at the people who are not getting involved. That's what we do. We look and see. If you've been sitting down, and I'd see, if you've been sitting down for more than, say, 20, 30 minutes and you look like you want to dance, I'm going to come to you. If somebody comes and asks me to dance, I'll dance with them. But as soon as I'm free, I'm going to go try to find you. That's what everybody needs to do if you want to create an inclusive space. But it won't work if you don't authentically want that. Okay, so the taxi dancing thing, it works fine, I guess, as a Band-Aid, but it doesn't work that well, because basically what you're doing is you're incentivizing something that everybody in an inclusive environment needs to be doing without being bribed to do so. Then you have the time where, okay, you're bribing these people to dance with folks, but as soon as they're off shift, they're not going to do it anymore, right? They're not going to do it anymore because the incentive is gone. And that's the problem, right? That's not going to work, right? The only way to really fix this is you have to build a community around inclusive people. Now, that means that there are going to be people who are not going to want to be a part of that community. We learned a long time ago that having a unified community doesn't mean that everybody's in that community. No. What we focus on is we shine our light bright, we vibrate at a certain frequency. People who are attracted and resonate with us are drawn to us. People who don't. In our case, who does that end up being? People who are choosy about who they dance with. Predators, people who enable predators, people who are shady and toxic, because we spend a lot of time criticizing all sorts of toxicity, including the non-inclusive vibe. So that's what worked for us. If you want to have an inclusive community, you have to do the same. A lot of organizers right now, all they really care about is bodies, bodies, bodies. You know, I want this many attendees. This is how many people I want, right? And the reason for that is, one, because money, but also because you kind of, when you reach a certain critical mass at an event, then people, it's like, you know, it's like actual critical mass and gravity, right? Once you get a certain mass, now you start to draw. So once you have a big event, it's easy to promote your event because more people want to come because they want to be a part of the crowd. Problem is, if you're not curating the vibe of your event, if it's just about bodies, you're going to have a whole lot of people who don't vibe with inclusivity. They don't, because they're not inclusive people. They're going for different reasons. They want to have fun on their own terms, which is often pick the people I want to dance with, who tend to be people they want to smash, or people who are going to make them look good on the videos that everybody's constantly taking during social dancing. They don't care as much about connecting. They only care about looking good. And if that's your focus, you're not going to want to dance with everybody. Now, the irony is, again, you're often overlooking some of the best dancers because they don't look the part, right? But at the same time, whether or not someone is a good dancer or not, for me, if someone pays their money to come to our event, I want to make sure that they're having a good time. Any organizer who does not do this does not deserve your money. And I'll talk about this at the end, and that's going to really trigger people, but it is what it is, okay? So make sure that you actually want to have an inclusive space. 2, set the example in your own spheres of influence by how you act, who you are as a person, and how you treat dancers in your community. And it starts at the local level. It starts in your classes. It starts in your local socials. Because if every city, every community builds this environment, then when you go to a festival, everybody there will already be on board. The reason we've been able to build an international community that's inclusive is because everywhere we go, every class we teach, every time we speak about things, we always talk about the importance of being social and social dancing. The people who are choosy, elitist, groupie types don't usually come to our stuff. They don't like being around us for that reason. And it works to our benefit, right? You have to be willing to take a stand if you want an inclusive environment. If all you care about is bodies and numbers, well, that's what you're going to get. Because what we're talking about is right now the exception rather than the rule. Okay? So make sure it's what you authentically want. Set the example. 3, you have to fight cliquishness and enablement culture. Okay, so with this, you have to understand privilege. Okay, and I'll talk about in Kizomba, the most privileged demographic is in Kizomba Samba, the Palop male, Portuguese-speaking Africans. They are the most privileged, and then Africans. So it's like that. In Kizomba Samba, it's Palop African men. In Urban Kids, it's still Black and African men, and then also Black men in general tend to be the most privileged, the most in-demand dancers, so on and so forth, right? The creator of Urban Kids is Congolese, right? So in Europe and America, Black men tend to be the most in demand, which is a flip-flop from society at large, because Black men are not privileged based on their race in regular society. But in Kizomba particularly, Black men tend to be in a position of influence, whereas Black women are in the position of least influence. White women tend to be in the position of most influence, Black women less, okay? Especially if you are a younger or younger looking, especially if you have a certain shape. White women who wear certain things, you're the queen. For here, Black men, okay, Black men and white women. That's why you see that, and people talk about that a lot. And the reason I'm talking about that is not to make white women feel bad or put upon or anything like that. It's not that. It's that you have to understand how privilege works in these different spaces in order to combat these privileges, and how to combat privilege in order to create an inclusive environment, right? So in Kizomba, because there's so many Black people, It's easy to be pro Black Lives Matter because there's so many black people that you're going against the grain if you don't support Black Lives Matter, which is not necessarily the case in society at large, right? In Kizomba, because these African and Palop and black men have so much privilege, they tend to get away with a lot of different toxicity, and that's including being disrespectful, that's including being predators, assaulting people, alleged rapes, all kinds of things who've been perpetrated by this privileged group. Okay, and they get away with it in their spheres of influence because of this. If you want to create an inclusive environment, you can't enable anything that's going to make people feel not included. Any sort of disrespect, toxicity, choosiness, you can't enable it, even if it's coming from your friends. And this is why this is important. If you're in a clique or a tight-knit group of friends, it's going to be difficult to stand up against your friends on these things because you don't want to be ostracized. You want to be accepted. A lot of us want to feel like we're part of the group. When you go against the grain, you're no longer going to feel like a part of the group, right? Because that's often how these cliques and these tight-knit groups work. As long as you toe the line, you're okay. As soon as you don't, you're in trouble. Don't enable bad behavior, right? In Kizomba, there's a toxic enablement culture, especially among Palops and Africans, where they'll circle the wagons and look the other way when each other, engage in bad behavior for whatever reason. And that's something that's worth going into a whole nother video about. But there is a toxic enablement culture where people, particularly people who are African, Black, or Palop, are being enabled even when they're engaging in behavior that is actually harmful to the healthy growth of the community. You cannot do that in an inclusive community. Okay? Anyone who's disrespectful, talking trash about people, being disreputable, dishonest, predatory, you can't have this. You can't have it in an inclusive community. You just can't. Okay? So fight this toxic enablement culture. Just because someone is your friend, your countryman, someone who hasn't done anything to you, wrong is wrong. And anything harmful needs to be called out and cannot be enabled. If you do enable this bad behavior, you cannot build an inclusive community. It just doesn't work that way. Okay? So these are the things that you can do right now. And the last thing before we start talking about the professional side is listen when people tell you about their experiences, right? If someone tells you, just like in rape culture, if victims or survivors come to you with their stories, believe them. With this, if people are not feeling included, especially if you are a leader or an organizer, if you get feedback, like say from one of the questionnaires that we're going to be making and stuff like that, if you get feedback, listen to them. Listen to how people feel. There was recently a discussion, and here's the interesting thing, and we'll talk about that at the end. There was a discussion where it was like, black women sharing their experience and black men gaslighting them and basically saying, they're basically saying, I don't believe you. I haven't experienced that, right? Black women were saying, I feel overlooked. And they're like, meh. Now, again, these are still men who've been supported and enabled by these same people for years. And I'll talk about that at the end, right? Why are you supporting and enabling people who don't really care about you? But that'll be my last point. But yeah, don't enable people. Don't enable people. And when people in your spheres of influence come to you with their stories, listen to them. Listen to them. And the last thing I will talk about is, before I switch to the professional thing, if you're not a person in a position of leadership, you're not an artist or whatever, or an organizer, you still have a lot of power. And what you do is you have the power of who you choose to invest in. I often see people on Facebook constantly talking about how they're not getting dances, they don't feel appreciated. And I want to go on their post so bad and say, why do you keep investing in these events and in these people when you go to these events and you are not being appreciated, right? Why are you investing in people who don't care about you? Why are you investing in events that don't cater to what you want? Do you want to really be a part of these groups and cliques so bad that you'll waste your money on something that doesn't add value to your life? But it's not my place to go on somebody's wall and trigger them like that, right? So I don't say anything. If you know what you want in the dance community, if you know you want to be a part of a healthy, unified, inclusive, or whatever it is that you want, community, why are you investing in people who, because again, these conversations, and I'm talking about organizers now, all the organizers were around 3-4 years ago when the same conversation was had. So if these spaces have not become inclusive now, it's because the organizers have not been focused or prioritized on that. If you want to be a part of an inclusive community, you have to invest in people who are actually building the community and stop investing in people who don't. Because basically what you're doing, if you want to be a part of an inclusive community and you're spending all your money going to cliquish events, you're putting a square peg and you're trying to ram it into a circular hole, and it doesn't work. If you like the cliquish vibe because you are a part of the group, then by all means, go where you feel comfortable. But if you want to be a part of an inclusive environment, then you're better off investing in people who've built that sort of environment. Not just us. You might say, oh, you're just saying that because you have one of the few inclusive environments. We do, but that's not the point. What we've done, anybody else can do if you authentically desire to do so and you're willing to put in the work. As a consumer, you got to vote with your dollars. Put your money and your time and your resources towards folks who are building what you want to be a part of. Otherwise, you're part of the problem too. I guarantee you, a lot of people right now are going to start saying inclusion and whatever, and the reason they're doing it is because they want to avoid being canceled, period. Okay. Last thing is professional stuff. And I'll talk about Kizomba specifically because as an organizer, that's what I do. There have been a lot of people who, and this is specifically, black women have been women and black women who feel, and this is also in the dance scene in general as well for women, but in Kizomba, and I've seen this in Afro-Latin dance too. Women and black women who feel like they're being overlooked for jobs, their work is not valued as much. In Kizomba, it's been black women who've been speaking out the most against this. And overall, I will say I agree that, I think women overall in the dance scene aren't as appreciated as much. In our sphere of influence, because, Monica has been someone who's been an advocate for women empowerment from the beginning. And obviously, I don't think we'd be a good partnership if I didn't agree with that. So for us, we've made it a point to hire women, solo women, black women. I mean, you look at our personal events and who we hire, and you'll see the Rainbow Coalition. I think we pretty much have everything except Native Americans. I don't know a lot of Native American Kizomberos, but hopefully I'll meet some. Maybe we can get some popping now. But other than that, we've got pretty much everything. We have a very diverse community and a very diverse artist lineup in who we work with. So when I say we have an inclusive environment, we do, right? We make sure that we hire a diverse group. That being said, if you are someone who feels like you are not being hired and overlooked because of your race, your gender, or whatever else, you need to ask yourself, is that really what's going on? I'll use as an example. DJs. DJ is something that is specifically, it's way skewed towards males. And in Kizomba, there are very few female DJs. And, that's something that obviously I'm thinking about. And, we actually had a female DJ do some sets at our last festival in Playa. She did a good job. And so that's something that personally we want to work on. Obviously, we want to get some more female DJs and things like that. We had a DJ training here in Houston, and it was all ladies and me, and that was cool. So, like I said, there are ways in which we can all improve. But me as an organizer, if I'm looking, let's say I want to hire a black female DJ in the United States. I only know of one, And the only one that I know of is the one who disrespected my mother, who is one of the most toxic people I've ever met in this community. Okay? So I'm not going to hire somebody who would disrespect my mother. Okay? Not only will I not hire someone like this, I will also not invest in anyone who does hire her. Now, is that because I'm anti-black woman? Obviously not. I love black women, but I will not enable toxicity. And here's the problem. A lot of the people who are now, this is one of the people who are all now clamoring, you need to hire, you need to, everyone arguing for respect and representation. But they've been disrespectful to other people, including us, for an example, right? If you are a professional and you want to be hired, you need to first check yourself and say, is the problem my race? Is the problem my gender? Is the problem my body type? Or is there something else going on? Because I can tell you for a number of people in the Kizomba community, it isn't your race, gender, or whatever. It's your bad energy and your poor choices for two reasons. One, who have you been investing in? Have you been investing in people who would actually give you experiences, to give you opportunities? Are you investing in people who even gives a shit about you? Right? There are a lot of, and I'll talk about black women because these are the folks in Kizomba we've been talking about it right now. There are a lot of black women who we've tried to give opportunities to, reach out to. A number of them have, been very disrespectful towards us, have talked shit, have tried to do all kinds of stuff, right? Again, the female DJ who disrespected my mother is a black woman. My mother's a black woman, and you're disrespecting another black woman, but then you want to turn around and argue that you deserve to be respected, blah, blah, blah. And there are a lot of people who know that this person disrespected my mother, but continue to enable this behavior. Now, from where I stand as a professional, as an organizer, I'm not going to hire you because you're toxic. And if you enable toxic people, you're toxic too. And I can't get down with that, right? And I'm someone, me and my partner, we want to be diverse. We want to make sure that we're giving opportunities to people who are being overlooked. There are a lot of people who I'd love to work with, people who we've actually reached out to in the past, but there's been so much toxicity thrown our way. Absolutely not. And I can talk about this. A lot of people are afraid to say this because they're afraid that they're going to get canceled or seen as racist or whatever. But for me, I'm not racist. I'm the first one to say I love black women. I'm the first to say I dance with people who are usually the overlooked people. But you don't get a pass on being toxic because of your race, because of your gender, because of any other reason. Toxic is toxic. Wrong is wrong. And if you as a professional are engaging in toxic behavior or enabling toxic people, you can't play victim. You're responsible. Because while the truth is there are people who are being overlooked, a lot of the people beating the drum the loudest right now are not the people who should be the face of the movement, if you understand what I'm saying. Because people will swear up and down that the reason I'm not where I want to be is because of what I look like, when the real reason is because of the way you treat people, because of your energy and your choices. Now, that being said, if you as a professional are not toxic, are not enabling toxic people, are not the kind of people who disrespected my mother, who disrespected my family, and you have a quality product, here's the next thing you need to look at. Who are you investing in? I can tell you as organizers that for us, we tend to give the first priority to people who've actually supported our events, right? So if you're someone who's never supported any of our events and then you jump up and expect to be hired as a professional, why should we give you an opportunity over someone who's actually supported us, someone who's been to our events, someone who's actually seen the vibe and things like that? That tends to be the main way we hire now. If you're not world-class, that's what we look at. Either you need to have a world-class product or we need to like your energy and vibe because we've gotten to know you. So if you haven't done that, then, I mean, again, the buck stops with you right there. There are a lot of people out there who spend all their time investing in supporting and showing love to people who don't really care about them. I've seen people do this for years. You're investing in the wrong people and then turn around and try to trash people like us who actually would give them opportunities, but can't because we can't support toxicity. If that is you, then you have no one to blame but yourself. Now, that being said, if you are someone who has a good product, you have good energy, you're not toxic or enabling toxic people, then the next thing that you need to do is start supporting people who actually want an inclusive environment, right? If you're a DJ or a teacher or whatever, start going to some of these events and just go as an attendee. That way, and I'm talking about our experience, but I think it's similar. Go and get to know the people at these events. Go and get to Derek, I don't understand exactly what you're asking me. As a community member advocating for speaking in regards to a marginalized group of people, would you consider engaging with that person? I engage with anyone who wants to engage with me. I don't understand what you're saying right now. But yeah, sure. Yeah. I engage with anybody. But again, I don't know exactly you'll have to, Derek, and maybe I can talk to you more about that offline. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking right there. Yeah, engaging with a marginalized group of people, sure. I mean, again, we are people who have given opportunities to marginalized groups of people. We're people who show love to marginalized groups of people. Oh, you're talking about, oh, Derek, if you're talking about the lady who disrespected my mother, look, it's like this. This particular person has been disrespectful to us, our family, our business. 6 Waves from Sunday has gone out of our way to be disrespectful to us. And I'm even willing to let that go, but I'm not willing to let go the disrespect towards my mother because that shows a level of unprofessionalism and trashy behavior that goes above and beyond anything I've seen so far. Okay. So when my mother gets an apology, sure. Yeah. Again, I'm not someone who holds a grudge, guys. But here's the thing, and maybe I should have mentioned this. If you are a toxic person today, you don't have to be a toxic person tomorrow, right? But what you do have to do is what I call owning your shit. You have to own your shit. That means you have to apologize, make things right, and change your behavior. If the worst thing you've ever done, me personally, if the worst thing you've ever done is talk shit about me personally, I really don't care. You apologize to me, and it's like nothing ever happened. If you disrespect my family, you need to apologize to them. And if you apologize to them and your behavior improves, we're good. If you're a rapist or a predator, no. Only when you make things right with the people who you've assaulted and suffered the consequences, then you can go on the road to redemption. But yeah, man, as someone who's outspoken, I'm not a sensitive guy. And I think any organizers out there or people in positions of influence who want an inclusive community, you can't hold grudges with people who get their stuff together, right? Because a lot of people who are inclusive today, who are not inclusive today, maybe you'll watch this video and want to be inclusive, right? You can't keep hammering on people who are trying to do better, but you first have to be held accountable. So everybody out here who's trying to hold other people accountable for racism, for sexism, for rape culture, for whatever it is, if you haven't held yourself accountable first for the bad things that you've done, then you're a hypocrite and your message will get lost. That's why for me, when I see a lot of these people and Kizomba saying that I always talking and all this stuff, I'm like, you're people who have literally been toxic towards us, and we would have given you opportunity. So that's on you. From our experience, you are to blame for your position and your state. Now, take those people out. Take the toxic people out. And it's true. There are people who have been marginalized. And often in hiring, it's women. Black women, but women in general as well, okay? And this is true. And as organizers, we do need to look at that. Now, the solution is not hire somebody because they're black or hire somebody just because they're a woman or hire somebody. No, that's like a quota system, and that's not going to work. You have to always, first and foremost, hire based on quality. Now, there are people who will say, well, people hire mediocre folks because there are friends over here and there. This is true, but that's also wrong. The answer isn't to do the same thing just in your benefit. The answer is hire people based on the quality of their product and don't overlook people just because they look a certain way, right? That's what we do. A lot of times, and this is all dance, people who don't have the certain body type or body shape or whatever, or the certain look don't get hired. For us, we're more concerned with your teaching ability. Are you a good teacher? Can you create something or build something or give something to our students in our community that's going to add value? And if you do, then we will hire you, right? And if you look at the people we work with in the past, you don't see you don't see the stereotypical look, right? It's very diverse in everything, age, body type, all types of things, right? So for us, we've done that and we've created an inclusive community. Now, again, I'm talking from our experience, and I'm not saying that for people out there that your how you feel, I'm not trying to invalidate your feelings. Because if you feel overlooked or you feel like you've been passed up, I should validate your feelings and listen to what you're saying. What I'm saying is, for some people who are saying they're being overlooked, it's not your looks that have been holding you back. It's your choices and your energy. And that's important as a professional. I'm not talking about as a social dancer. As a professional, more is expected of you. The standards on you are higher. You're not a social dancer spending money to go to events or to be involved in certain things and you expect a product, because you are someone who is seeking to be paid. You are someone who is offering the service. So the level of professionalism, and that means if you are a teacher, if you are a DJ, if you are an organizer, or you're someone trying to teach classes, there's some people who are like PowerPoint types. If you're a PowerPoint teacher too, you need to be held to a standard. Toxic is toxic. And anyone engaging or enabling toxicity, you're part of the problem. And if you are doing that, then you can't blame anybody else. I saw someone who was saying something about, basically we have to band together and people call us cliquish. Okay. Some people actually are cliquish. It's the truth. It's the truth. Are you showing love to people who would show love to you? And if you are not, then that's what you need to focus on. A lot of folks right now, if you're a professional, if you would start going to events and supporting people who are building inclusive communities, you would end up getting hired by them. That's how a lot of the people we've hired the last couple of years. Yeah. We had a DJ who came last year. He came to our event, vibed with the people, was dancing. We like him. We hired him from this year. Now, of course, that's a whole nother thing with COVID going on. But yeah, a lot of the people we work with in our events are people who've done our teacher training or they've come to our event. We got to know them, they got to know us, and they saw how our events are, how our vibe is, and then you get to decide. And as an artist, sometimes people have this haughty kind of feel like I'm not going to go to an event as just a attendee. I'm too big. Look, my partner and I have taught or performed in 15, 16 countries. We have a platform through our app that we've taught damn near 90 countries full of people how to dance Kizomba. We are some of the best instructors in this industry. And that being said, I still go to events, even local events, as just an attendee. And yes, I buy my full pass. Even events that were in Houston where we weren't hired, I still support and go as an attendee. Why? Because I'm humble, right? Because that's the kind of thing that's important. Even if you're not trying to get hired, this is the kind of thing that helps build community. If you're an instructor, you go to an event as an attendee and you create a good vibe there, that helps grow the community, which even if it's indirectly, will help you as well, right? For everybody who wants to build inclusive communities, it really is as the water rises, all boats rise, right? So I kind of got off track there. But yeah, as a professional, you have to really first look at yourself and your behavior. Again, in Kizomba, if you are a professional enabling the people who've disrespected my wife, disrespected my mother, etc., looking the other way and promoting accused rapists and things like this, how can you then turn around and then complain that you're being overlooked because of anything else? No. If any organizer who's truly building an inclusive community is going to be very sensitive to making sure that their community has good energy. And I'm speaking from experience because we've built such a community. And we understand that toxicity will destroy inclusion, period. And our whole thing, quality, integrity, inclusion, fun, right. Toxicity will destroy all of that. So the accountability has to start with you. Okay, I kind of got off track. Accountability has to start with you. If you're a professional and you want opportunities, first hold yourself accountable to make sure that you yourself are adhering to professional standards. If you're not adhering to professional standards, and I'm not just talking about training, but also how do you talk to people? Like I've seen people who are instructors, I look at them conversing on Facebook, they're super condescending and haughty, and they talk down to people all the time. Nobody wants to be around that kind of energy if you don't have that kind of energy already, right? Now, that being said, because I know there's people who might watch this and say, oh, he's talking bad on this group of people. I'm not. Okay. Yes, Alex, that's right. Good point. From YouTube. What's up, my boy? People want to be supported, but they don't support others, right? It's just like the people who were like, Black Lives Matter, you need to support us. But when I was talking about rape culture, it was crickets. You should support me and hire me, but you don't support anybody else. And you shit on the few organizers who would have given you opportunities. And that's the problem. There are people who I would love to give opportunities to and work with, but I won't because they're toxic. And you got to clean that up, which means you got to own your shit, hold yourself accountable. You have to hold yourself accountable and do better. That being said, outside of the toxic few, and I say this, it's not a lot, it's just a few. Unfortunately, sometimes the actions of a few can then kind of permeate to the group. And I could do a whole video on toxic enablement culture, but part of the problem with toxic enablement culture is if your group or the people you're enabled are a part of the same group or demographic, then from the outside, it tends to make the whole demographic look bad. Right? If you're a PALOP and you're enabling another PALOP just because they're a PALOP and they're engaging in bad behavior, sooner or later, people from the outside looking in are going to look at you and you're going to be painted by the same brush as the people you're enabled. So maybe don't do that, right? So to my people out there who are not toxic, who are not disrespectful, you have to humble yourself a little bit. You have to humble yourself a little bit, and you have to invest in and support the people who are building the kind of community that you want to be a part of. You want to teach at a certain event. Now, again, this is not, I want to teach at this event, go there. No, you have to do a little research. Do the organizers of these events and these spaces really care about being inclusive? If you want to be or teach at inclusive events, then you need to invest in and support the events that are doing that. In so doing, you build a relationship with the organizers and you build a relationship with the community, right? Because it could go one of two ways. You can build a relationship with the organizer and like, cool, or you can build a relationship with the community and then they will then tell the organizer, hire this person because we really love them. If you're toxic, it's not going to work. I don't care how popular you are. If you are disrespectful or shady or predatory, then we're not going to hire you and we're not going to support anybody who does, period. Until you own your shit, do better, and make things right. Right? But if you are not a part of that, this is the best thing you can do. Make sure that your work product, if it's not world class, that you're putting in the work to make it so. right? Everyone we hire isn't world-class talent. Some people, they're not world-class yet, but they're working hard. And there are people we've given opportunities to over the years. They may not have been the biggest names or whatever, but they're working hard. I see value, and my wife sees value in what they're doing. They have good energy, and we want to support them, right? Yeah. And DJing, and this is something going forward, I'm probably gonna, because I am a DJ and we do DJ training, I'd love to, mentor some female DJs, right? If people want to learn from me and stuff, this is one thing I'm thinking, because as I said, all of us can do better. So, I'm thinking about how I can use my platform and our skills to help, because that's one aspect, especially DJs. I'm not going to help toxic DJs, but if you want to learn, we have DJ trainings, things like this, and you invest, and I see that you're doing your thing, I'm more likely to want to hire you and work with you because I've spent time with you. I see what your work ethic is like. I see what your personality and your energy is like. The problem is that there are a lot of people, professionals and social dancers, and they're spending all their money and time investing in people who don't care about them, who are not interested in giving them any opportunities. And yet they keep investing in the wrong people. And I'm going to end this video because I went way over time. I didn't mean to be talking this much. Whether you are a dancer, artist, whatever, if you know what you want out of a community, make sure that not only the example you set, but where you invest your time and energy tracks what you want. Otherwise, there's some hypocrisy going on. Otherwise, you're just saying something to appear good or be performative when you don't really want that. If what you want is an inclusive environment, 1, ask yourself if that's really what you want. 2, make sure that your example, that you set the example yourself, whether you're a dancer, organizer, whatever. Make sure you set the example. 3, don't enable people who engage in behavior that is toxic or contrary to inclusion, even if they're your friends. Fight toxic enablement culture. 4, make sure that you, as a social dancer, as a consumer, invest in people who are actually doing 1, 2, and 3. If not, you're part of the problem. You're waiting around. It's like the definition of insanity. You keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result. Don't sit around hoping and waiting that the people who you want so much to be accepted by are going to change and give you what you want, because they're not. Even people who are going to start becoming performative now to avoid being canceled, if you are not an inclusive person by personality, you can't create an inclusive space. You can't do it. People are just going to start saying these certain things in order to try to avoid being canceled, but that's not going to work. Don't invest your time and money in people and situations who aren't bringing about the sort of thing that you want. And this isn't just about Kizomba Harmony. This is about anything, okay? If you are a professional who feels like you've been overlooked, 1, you can create your own spaces too, right? And I see people doing this, and especially in the Afro-Latin scene, because it's worse for particularly Black women in the Afro-Latin scene. It's a lot worse there than it is in Kizomba, because in Kizomba, a lot of like the Ginga queens, there's a lot of ladies who are getting love now in Kizomba, but in the Afro-Latin scene, it's not like that. So I just saw they just created an online festival and they called it Unseen Queens. So shout out to the Unseen Queens. If you look up Unseen Queens on Facebook, you will see what I'm talking about. It's called Unseen Queens. So a little bit of promo for you guys, me just trying to help you out. It's some Black queens who are in salsa and zouk, and they're doing an online thing. So check them out, support them if you look up Unseen Queens. Can't remember the thing, but Unseen Queens kind of hit my head. You can create your own spaces and opportunities, but make sure that your own house is in order before you're out here yelling and telling other people that they're not supporting you. Are you supporting other people who would give you opportunities? Are you shitting on other people in your community who would have given you opportunities? Because if the problem lies with you, you need to focus on you first. Once you get you together, then let's go back and we can talk about how we can give opportunities to people who are being overlooked. because I'm not going to hire, and nobody who shares our kind of vision is going to hire toxic people just because of the packaging. I don't care if you come in a melanated, female, older, I don't care what you look like. If you're toxic, and that needs to be taken care of, period. I spent a lot of time talking about this because it's that important. I'm going to, again, because I had some technical difficulties, I'm going to take all these videos, put them together, and I'm going to cut things out. So it'll be like a quick hits video. I'll try to keep it to about 30 minutes or so, and I'm going to repost it. So yeah, that's all I got on how to build or be a part of an inclusive community. This is how we did it. We listen to people in our community who give us feedback. We ask ourselves a lot what we're doing kind of jives with our vision, and we constantly check ourselves. We set an example in how we personally act in the dance community. We work hard to keep toxicity out. We don't enable people, even if they're our friends, we don't enable toxic behavior. And we invest in people. We look to see if people are being overlooked. We invest in them. Now, for us, we didn't have to specifically say, okay, I'm going to hire this demographic, that demographic. It kind of ended up working out organically for us. But sometimes we will definitely focus on people who haven't gotten opportunities, right? It may not necessarily be based on your race, gender, whatever, but we'll look and say, okay, who are people who are working with us and investing in us and working hard? We want to help them build their own platforms, so we're going to give them opportunities. And a lot of our events, especially BAD, our event in Houston, that's a big part of what we're trying to do with that event, is bring people together and give opportunities to people who haven't necessarily gotten those opportunities. But you have to have your own house in order first. So if you're taking care of all of that, feel free to hit me up. I'm happy to, be a mentor or help to anybody who wants that kind of help. Anybody who's trying to do and be better and add value, I want to support you. So feel free to hit us up. If you want to be a part of the solution and talk about these kind of issues, we have a group called Kizomba Unity, which I'll put in the description. Join that. It's a discussion group, no promotion. I'm not even sharing this video in that group because it has Kizomba Harmony on it, and we want to be fair, have integrity. We don't, even though it's not really promoting any events, it's still considered promotional, so we're not going to put it in there. I'm going to shout out to Julian. I said I was going to make a questionnaire that you can answer if you're someone who's felt overlooked. One will be specifically for Black women, and then one will be just in general for people who felt overlooked for whatever reason. It'd be a questionnaire that you can use. Any leader, teacher, organizer, you can use this questionnaire to ask your community and to get feedback. Read the feedback. And even us, like I said, we have ways that we could be more inclusive, that we could do better in our own community. We're not perfect. And when you think, you have to always be open to criticism and always be open to growth, right? Because we haven't done everything perfect either. We've learned from our mistakes. So if you use this, listen to people, yeah? I'm also going to put on there some questions you can ask yourself to make sure that if you want to be a part of an inclusive community, that your actions are tracking with what you say you want. It's things like, how do I decide who I want to dance with? Who do I normally dance with? Who do I ask first to dance with? If you're an organizer, who do I hire and why? What are the criteria that I look at? Right? Things like that. These are just off the top of my head, but I'm gonna make it, and I'm gonna share that questionnaire in the comments of this video as well. So, thanks for sharing. I had about some technical glitches. Sorry, not thanks for sharing. Thanks for watching. I had some glitches, so this video is in like 3 parts, but I'm gonna patch them all together and make one video that's a bit more concise. And I hope that you guys have found some value for this. Hey, Alexander Luke, how you doing, man? I hope that you guys have found some value in this. And yeah, everybody out there who's working to build inclusive communities, I appreciate you. What you're doing is very important. I think there's a culture shift happening right now. People are starting to feel a lot more fed up with things and a lot more discerning, and they're thinking a lot more about where they spend their time and energy. So it's good news for people who are focused on adding value to their communities. Not so bad for toxic people and selfish, opportunistic people, but that's not really my concern. I think when we come back from COVID, I think the dance community is going to be in a uniquely awesome position. And I look forward to being a part of that. To everybody else who's a part of the solution, I salute you. I appreciate you. Feel free to share this video or the repost that I do if you found value in it. And thanks everybody for commenting, sharing, watching. Yeah, see you next time. Peace.